The sound of the clock was louder than usual that night. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Each second seemed to echo inside the silent apartment, bouncing off the half-packed boxes and the broken dreams that filled the room. Amir sat on the floor beside his couch, papers scattered around him, unpaid bills, bank notices, and a thin letter that read, "Termination of employment." He had read it at least 50 times, and yet, each word still burned. For 12 years, Amir had worked at the same construction company. He had climbed slowly, from an assistant engineer to project manager. He wasn't rich, but life was steady. He had a small apartment, a car, and dreams of one day starting his own firm. But last month, the company collapsed, a chain of bad deals, corruption, and poor timing. Overnight, hundreds were laid off. His name was one among them. His wife, Sana, had left 2 years ago, tired of the long nights and Amir's obsession with work. They had no children. He had always told himself he would fix things later. Now, there was no later, only a quiet apartment and the heavy truth that everything he had built had slipped through his fingers. 4 days, he stayed inside. Calls from friends went unanswered. Meals were instant noodles or coffee. Sometimes he would stare at the city lights outside his window and wonder if anyone else was as lost as he was. But one evening, when the electricity was cut off for non-payment and the room went dark, Amir whispered to himself, "Maybe this is where it all ends." Then, just as quickly, another thought appeared, or maybe, this is where it starts again. The next morning, Amir took a walk for the first time in weeks. The city was waking, shopkeepers raising shutters, children in uniforms rushing past, an old newspaper vendor yawning behind his stall. He found himself at a nearby park and sat on a wooden bench, his head full of noise and regret. An old man, in a faded brown sweater, sat beside him. His hands trembled slightly as he fed crumbs to the pigeons. "You look like a man who's lost his map," the old man said without looking up. Amir gave a tired smile. "Maybe I lost the whole country." The man chuckled softly. "Ah, that bad?" "I lost my job," Amir said. "My savings are almost gone. I don't know what's next." The old man nodded slowly, as if he already knew. "I was a teacher once," he said. 30 years in the same school. When I retired, I thought I'd rest and enjoy life. But I didn't realize how much my identity depended on that classroom. I felt empty, like someone had erased me. "So what did you do?" Amir asked. "I started teaching again," the man said with a grin. "In the evenings. Not for money, just to help the neighborhood kids with homework. That's when I learned something." He turned to Arms and looked him straight in the eyes. "When life erases your plans, it's inviting you to draw something new." The words landed softly, but deeply. Amir sat there long after the man left, watching the pigeons scatter and return again. That evening, Amir opened his old laptop. He began searching for work, but every posting seemed impossible. Experience required, under 30 only, must relocate. He closed the tabs and stared at his reflection in the dark screen. Then, an idea flickered, something small, almost silly. Years ago, Amir used to design simple wooden furniture as a hobby. Chairs, small tables, and bookshelves, nothing fancy, but crafted with care. He had stopped when his job consumed all his time. He went to the storage room and pulled out a dusty box of tools. The smell of wood and varnish greeted him like an old friend. The next few days, he started working again, sawing, sanding, shaping. He sold one of his designs on an online marketplace for just a few thousand rupees. Not much, but it felt like a spark, a heartbeat. He began waking up earlier, walking to the lumber shop, and returning with small orders. His hands blistered, but his mind felt alive. He even smiled once or twice. But life rarely moves in straight lines. A month later, a customer accused him of selling a defective table. He demanded a refund online, leaving a harsh review that killed new orders overnight. Amir tried to reason, but the man was rude and dismissive. Frustrated, Amir threw his phone on the bed and shouted, "I tried. I'm trying. Why does it still fail?" He sat in the darkness, his heart heavy again. That night, he received a message from the old man in the park. They had exchanged numbers once, casually. It read, "Failure is not your enemy, son. Fear is. You only lose when you stop walking." Amir stared at the screen for a long time. Then, he took a deep breath, stood up, and picked up the fallen table. He fixed it, reinforced the joints, polished the edges, and resold it at half price. The buyer this time sent a photo of the table, captioned, "Perfect. Thank you." It wasn't about the money anymore, it was about the feeling of getting up again. Months passed. Amir kept working, one table, one chair, one mistake, one success at a time. He named his small online shop Second Start. At first, only friends and locals bought his items. Then, a popular home decor blogger featured one of his handmade bookshelves in a post titled "Beautiful Things Made by Broken People." Within days, Amir's orders tripled. He rented a small workshop and hired 2 young apprentices, both from underprivileged backgrounds. He taught them not just carpentry but patience, discipline, and care. "Each cut tells a story," he told them. "And every story deserves a second chance." One afternoon, as he was loading a finished dining table into a customer's truck, he heard a familiar voice behind him. "Amir." He turned. It was Sana. She looked surprised, maybe even proud. "I saw your shop name online," she said. "I wasn't sure if it was you." "It is," he said, smiling faintly. "How are you?" "I'm good," she replied softly. "I heard about what happened with your company. I wanted to reach out, but it's okay," Amir interrupted gently. "That was another life." There was a long pause between them, full of things that didn't need to be said. She looked around the workshop. "You built all this?" "From scratch," he said. "Or maybe from failure." She nodded, her eyes misty. "I'm happy for you." They didn't talk much after that, but as she walked away, Amir felt no bitterness. Just peace. Some chapters, he realized, are not meant to continue, only to teach. Success can make you forget how fragile life is. One rainy night, a short circuit in the workshop caused a fire. By the time the firefighters arrived, half of the stock was gone, along with his precious tools and order records. He stood outside in the pouring rain, watching the flames swallow months of effort. For a brief moment, the old despair tried to return, the familiar whisper, "You're cursed. It's over again." But this time, he didn't listen. He remembered the park bench. He remembered the old man's words. He remembered the feeling of wood in his hands, and the heartbeat of creation. So he walked into the ashes, picked up a half-burnt piece of timber, and said quietly, "We'll build again." The next day, his apprentices showed up, faces pale, clothes wet, but eyes determined. "Sir," one of them said, "we're not quitting. This workshop gave us hope. We'll fix it, together." Neighbors came with food and tools. The old man from the park arrived with a box of nails and a gentle smile. Social media spread the story, "Local craftsman loses shop in fire, vows to rebuild." Within days, strangers began donating materials, offering help, even placing pre-orders to support him. For weeks, Amir and his small team worked tirelessly. They rebuilt the workshop brick by brick, plank by plank. The walls still smelled faintly of smoke, but to Amir, it smelled like survival. One morning, as the sun poured through the window, Amir stood in front of his new workshop sign, "Second Start Furniture," freshly painted in bold letters. Customers began to visit again. The business grew steadily, but Amir's heart remained humble. He no longer chased success, he simply practiced gratitude. He kept one burnt plank from the fire and hung it on the wall, carved with words that now guided his life: "The end is only a door. Have the courage to walk through." Months later, on a quiet Sunday, Amir returned to the park bench where it all began. The same pigeons, the same gentle wind, but the old man was not there. A younger man sat instead, his face weary, his posture defeated. Amir smiled and sat beside him. "You look like a man who's lost his map," he said softly. The young man sighed. "Yeah. Lost everything." Amir chuckled. "Maybe not everything. Sometimes you only lose what you were never meant to keep. He took a piece of paper from his pocket and handed it over, the same note the old man once gave him, written in faded ink. When life erases your plans, it's inviting you to draw something new. The young man read it and looked up, his eyes watering. "Did you write this?" "No," Amir said. "But it saved me once." They sat there in silence, watching the pigeons fly and return again, just as they always do. The true courage lies not in never falling, but in standing up, scarred and steady, and whispering to yourself, "I will start again."